Hello, my name is Thomas Marconi, and for my music final, I'm going to analyze Smooth Sailing by Leon Bridges. Before I get into the in-depth analysis of the song, I'd like to discuss the background of the artist and some of his accomplishments. Leon Bridges was born July 13th in 1989 with the name Todd Michael Bridges in Atlanta, Georgia. His family would later move to Fort Worth, Texas. He is considered an American gospel and soul singer-songwriter. His style resembles 1960s soul and is often compared to that of Otis Redding and Sam Cooke. However, he is best known for his single Coming Home off his debut album, also known as Coming Home, which was released on June 23rd in 2015 off of the label Columbia Records. The album was nominated for Best R&B Album at the 58th Annual Grammy Awards, which is interesting since Bridges considers himself a soul and gospel artist. He also appeared as the musical guest on Saturday Night Live on December 5th, 2015. This is where he performed the featured song of this project, Smooth Sailing, which is a great transition into the discussion of this song. I want to start out talking about the instrumentation of the music. We hear a small drum set consisting of the snare, cymbals, and tom-tom drums. A saxophone carries the piece in terms of its 60s soul feel, and the tambourine plays a background role while the guitar helps carry the tempo and occasionally interjects in. Bridges is not alone as a vocalist. There are also two female backup vocalists that usually join in around the chorus and hook. Lyrically, the song has a general theme throughout. Bridges uses a ship as a metaphor for a woman he is attracted to. The lyrics are relatively dominated by a chorus and a hook that are mostly repeated throughout the song with short verses in between. The hook is heard the most throughout the song and goes like this.
Sure, said I like the way, said I like the way, yeah. You sail your ship now, let me be your cargo.
This is where we first hear the ship reference that is reiterated throughout the song. And in terms of analytical breakdown, he's referring to a woman as a ship and himself as the cargo, and he'd like to get to know her better. We don't hear the chorus until later in the song, which sounds like this.
She's smooth, smooth sailing.
Smooth sailing, yeah.
She's smooth, smooth, darling.
The chorus simply states that he is attracted to some girl, but we don't hear the ship reference, which is really interesting, that is mostly heard throughout the song. Now I want to get into the general sound and tonality of the instruments in the song. In terms of pattern, the song is fairly predictable. Where we do see variation is at the introduction. Each time the hook is played, the song has instrumental variations that will be discussed later in the timestamps. Dynamically, the volume doesn't change much. Only one notable moment is with a saxophone, but is not repeated again, and so the dynamic is fairly stable. The harmony of this song is consonant, which is expected. This is a song that you would want the listeners to have a pleasing sound to when they hear. And the key is major, which is also something expected with a song like this as kind of a happy, loving going song. For timbre, I want to highlight only a few instruments. The guitar has a deep, dreamy color that starts to interject later in the song. The saxophone couldn't be described any other way but roaring. It is also quite raspy and bright, but aside from timbre, we hear a homophonic texture with an upbeat tempo, which is a definite ode to the 60s style soul. At this point in the recording, I want to get into the breakdown of the timestamps of the song. The beginning of the song opens with the saxophone really at center stage and the drum cymbals setting the pace. There are no vocals to start the piece, and all other instruments, including the guitar, bass, tambourine, really just blend into the background until we get vocals later on in the piece. At 8 seconds into the piece, the sax kind of passes the torch to Leon Bridges' vocals that immediately become your ear's main focus. At the same time, the snare of the drum starts to come through. At timestamp 21 seconds, this is when we first hear the lyrical hook. We'll call it part B. Instrumentally, we hear the tom-tom drum with what I'll call a 1-2 punch, but then it's right back to snare and cymbals for the remainder of the hook. At timestamp 24 seconds, this is the first time we hear the female vocals in the background. They're present every time in the hook, and their lyrics are non-distinguishable from Leon Bridges's in that they just essentially repeat what he said the measure before. At 30 seconds in the middle of the hook, the backup female vocals actually cut out, and Bridges carries the hook for the remainder of its duration. At 36 seconds, Leon Bridges actually, his vocals cut out as well. And that's when we really hear the roaring sax, which I'm going to play for you. That comes in. This is primarily where we hear that timbre mentioned above of the bright yet kind of raspy saxophone. This is also the time where we can kind of hear the tambourine as an accompaniment to the saxophone, which seems to be the case every time the saxophone gets its center stage type present. I'm going to play that saxophone for you now. What you also heard during that saxophone is the repetition of its measures in the solo, starting at 43 seconds. At 51 seconds, the sax solo ends, and Leon starts the second verse with identical instrumentation to the timestamp at 8 seconds, which again is the saxophone kind of passing the torch to Leon's vocals, and Leon's vocals immediately become your kind of main focus. And at the same time, the snare of the drum starts to really come through, as opposed to like the cymbals or the tom-tom drums that are there. At 1 minute and 3 seconds, we first hear the interjection of a very jazzy, and how I kind of like to describe the timbre of the guitar sound as dreamy, which immediately goes right back to its standard pattern after it really just interjected into the song, which I'm going to play a snippet of now.
Passenger. Shook.
At a minute and 7 seconds, Leon starts the hook again, as described at the 21st second timestamp. And again, we hear the female backup singers. The difference at this hook is there is no tom-tom 1-2 punch that really introduces the hook for Bridges to start again. It just kind of goes. At a minute and 12 seconds is where we really see some variation in the song. The guitar from the 1:03 timestamp comes back. Yeah, this time it's right in the middle of the hook, which is a variation we haven't seen. At the 1 minute and 20 seconds timestamp is the first time we hear the chorus. We hear another 1-2 punch from the tom-tom drums, but this time at a slightly higher pitch than before. The drums continue with cymbals and rim clicks. The string instruments drop out, and the sax has small interjections throughout the chorus. Our main focus is on the vocals. One of the female vocalists actually becomes more of like a duet partner than a background singer. Bridges is again the prominent singer at this portion in the song. At a minute and 34 seconds, the vocals cut and the guitar comes to the forefront for a very short solo. It's similar to, again, what we heard at 1:03, but the dynamic of it is louder, and it's absolutely more powerful at this timestamp in the song. I'm going to play that for you now.
Calling.
At a minute and 41 seconds, Bridges starts the next verse of the song, and his voice is again at the center of attention, with the drums returning to setting the pace with mainly a snare and cymbal sound. At a minute and 47 seconds, the guitar very quickly interjects again with the electric and dreamy type sound that I've been reiterating throughout the piece. At 1 minute and 55 seconds, we get back to the hook. The female backup singers pick up again. The guitar again quickly interjects with the same electric and dreamy sound, which hasn't been done since the hook previous to this one, and is now kind of a staple for this portion of the song. At 2 minutes and 9 seconds, there is another new introduction into the chorus that involves a 1-2 punch of a cymbal and tom-tom instead of a 1-2 punch of 2 tom-tom drums. I want to play that introduction into the hook for you now so we can compare it to the earlier timestamps that introduced the hook. Again, the chorus consists of Leon and female backup vocals. At 2 minutes and 24 seconds, the guitar comes back in, this time with a different pattern than before. There are 3 measures that repeat, which I'll refer to as CC, and then it kind of ends with a prominent D measure I'm going to play that short solo for you now. At 2 minutes and 31 seconds, Bridges' vocals return for the final verse, and the instruments return to the standard patterns, the predicted patterns from what we've heard in the verses thus far. At 2 minutes and 38 seconds, Bridges' vocals cut out, and we hear a guitar riff that sounds like the guitarist is running his fingers down the neck of the guitar. At 2 minutes and 44 seconds, we return to the hook. But this time, there is no drum intro. The guitar has taken its place, similar to the CC that we heard at 2 minutes and 24 seconds. But it's a bit quieter, so I guess there is a slight change in dynamic at this portion of the song. And finally, at 2 minutes and 58 seconds, we end on a tom-tom drum roll with a cymbal, while Leon's vocals and the rest of this small orchestra mellow out the end of the song. This actually concludes the time-stamped portion of my analysis of Leon Bridges' Smooth Sailing. At this point, I would like to discuss further the cultural relevance of this piece. My first point when looking at the cultural relevance is, should this comeback of soul really surprise us, or is it exactly what's expected? We're talking about a genre that experienced its golden era in decades of high racial tension. Soul music used its storytelling and feel-good sound as an escape from extreme racism and bigotry. There's definitely no denying that racial tension has increased over the last few years, and with that, people may be looking for that escape again. That concludes my presentation of Smooth Sailing.